She stood alone in a ballroom filled with whispers, her engagement shattered like crystal on marble. The man she trusted had turned her into a spectacle, but when a duke emerged from the shadows, his voice cut through the chaos like a blade. What he offered was not love, but a bargain. What she accepted was not safety, but a gilded cage. Yet sometimes the most unexpected arrangements lead to the deepest transformations. If this story touches your heart, please subscribe and leave a like. It truly means the world. And comment below, let me know where you are listening from. Now let us begin. The chandeliers of Clarendon House burned like fallen stars, casting light across silk gowns and polished marble. Catherine Vance stood at the center of the ballroom, her gloved hand resting on the arm of her betrothed, willing the trembling in her fingers to still. 20 years of life had taught her to wear a smile like armor, and tonight she wielded it with practiced grace. Nathaniel Roth moved beside her with the confidence of a man born to maritime fortune. His cravat was perfectly tied, his dark coat immaculate, his eyes gleaming with calculation. She had believed it ambition. She had been mistaken. The waltz ended, and the dancers stilled. Catherine felt Nathaniel's arm tense. Around them, conversations dimmed to silence. Something was wrong. Nathaniel stepped forward, releasing her hand. His voice carried across the ballroom with cruel clarity. This engagement was a miscalculation, an error in judgment, much like a poorly invested venture. The connection between our families no longer serves my interests. The words struck like physical blows. Heat flooded Catherine's face, but her spine remained straight. She would not crumble before these vultures in evening dress. "Nathaniel," she began, her voice low and measured. "This is neither the time nor place for such a discussion." He turned to her, eyes cold. "There is no discussion to be had, Miss Vance. Your father's debts have become an encumbrance I refuse to shoulder. You were meant to be an asset. Instead, you are merely a burden." Catherine's vision blurred, but before she could respond, a new voice cut through the charged air. "A burden, you say? How fascinating. I have always found that men who speak of women as investments lack the wisdom to recognize value when it stands before them." Every head turned. A figure emerged from the shadows near the grand staircase, his walking stick tapping a steady rhythm. Tall and lean, dressed in black that made him seem carved from midnight itself, he approached with undeniable authority. Richard Hale, Duke of Blackwood. The Black Duke, some whispered, a man who had inherited young and ruled his estates with iron control after tragedy stripped him of family. He rarely appeared in society. His presence here was unexpected, his intervention unprecedented. He stopped between Catherine and Nathaniel, and the temperature dropped. His eyes, the color of winter steel, fixed on Nathaniel with cold assessment. "To publicly humiliate a woman of good character speaks not of her value, sir, but of your profound lack of honor." The Duke's voice was quiet yet carried to every corner. "This spectacle is a disgrace, and I will not stand witness without intervention." Nathaniel's face flushed. "Your Grace, this is a private matter. I fail to see how it concerns you. You made it public the moment you chose this venue for your performance." The Duke turned, his gaze falling upon Catherine. For the first time since the nightmare began, she felt seen rather than observed. His eyes softened fractionally, as if some internal guard briefly lowered. "I am making it my concern." He extended his hand. Catherine stared at it, as though it were a lifeline thrown across churning waters. His fingers were ungloved, the skin pale against black fabric. "If this gentleman has discarded you as common glass," the Duke said, his voice pitched for her ears yet somehow audible to all, "then I shall claim you as the finest crystal. Miss Vance, would you do me the honor of accepting my escort from this place?" Catherine's heart thundered. This man offered escape, but at what cost? She looked into his eyes and saw something that surprised her, not pity, but recognition. As though he understood precisely what this moment cost. She placed her trembling hand in his. His fingers closed around hers, firm and warm despite his cool demeanor. The contact sent an unexpected shiver through her, part fear and part something else entirely, something like a spark catching flame. "Thank you, Your Grace," she managed. "The formality is unnecessary," he replied, his thumb brushing once across her knuckles in a gesture so brief she might have imagined it. "My name is Richard, and I suspect we shall become far better acquainted in the days to come." He turned, keeping her hand secured in his, and walked toward the exit. The crowd parted like water. Catherine caught glimpses of faces as they passed, Lady Ashworth's blank expression, Lord Pemberton's raised eyebrows, Miss Caroline Winters's simpering delight. "Your Grace," Nathaniel's voice rang out, sharp with desperation, "you cannot simply take her. There are agreements in place." Richard paused but did not turn. "The agreements you speak of are void the moment you declared them so, Mr. Roth. Good evening." Outside, October air was sharp and clean. A black coach waited, its lanterns glowing like small moons. Richard handed her up with surprising care. As the coach pulled away, Catherine looked back. Through tall windows, she could see the ballroom still ablaze with light. Society did love its entertainment. She turned forward to find Richard watching her from the opposite seat. In the close confines, she noticed details she had missed. The sharp line of his jaw, the faint scar tracing from temple to hairline, the way his hands rested on his walking stick, controlled and still. "I suppose you are wondering what I intend," he said. "The thought had crossed my mind, Your Grace." "Richard," he corrected. "My intentions are quite straightforward. I need a wife. You need protection and security. I propose we come to an arrangement that serves both our purposes." Catherine's breath caught. An arrangement. The word felt cold, transactional. Yet was it not better than what she had just escaped? "What sort of arrangement?" she asked, keeping her voice steady. "Marriage. Before witnesses, binding and legal. I will settle your father's debts, provide you with a home and income, and ensure that neither you nor your family ever again face the threat of ruin. In exchange, you will become my duchess and provide me with an heir." The bluntness stole her words. This was no romantic proposition. This was a contract. Yet beneath the coldness, Catherine sensed something else, a loneliness that matched her own. "And what of affection?" she asked quietly. "What of companionship?" Richard's expression flickered. "Those are luxuries I cannot promise. I can offer you safety, respect, and a position of honor. I can guarantee you will never again be made to feel as you did tonight. But romance, Miss Vance, is not something I am capable of providing." The honesty was brutal, but she respected it. At least he did not lie. The coach continued through lamplit streets, carrying her away from one life toward another. She thought of her father, of debts that had driven Nathaniel away, of empty pantries and persistent creditors. She thought of her own dreams, once bright, now tarnished by reality. She looked at the Duke again, this man who had stepped from shadows to claim her when no one else would. His face was hard, his manner cold, but his actions had been kind. There was honor in him. Perhaps that would be enough. "I accept your terms," she said. "Richard." His eyes widened fractionally, the only sign of surprise he permitted. She thought she saw something else beneath the ice, relief perhaps, or gratitude. "Then we have an accord. The coach will take us to Blackwood House tonight. Tomorrow my solicitor will begin the necessary arrangements. Within the week, you will be my wife." The coach turned onto Grosvenor Square, and Catherine felt tears gathering. She tried to hold them back, but one escaped, tracing a warm path down her cold cheek. Richard moved with surprising gentleness. He withdrew a handkerchief and reached across the space between them. But instead of offering it, he brought the fabric to her face himself, touching it to the corner of her eye with careful precision. The gesture was intimate, in a way his words had not been. His fingertips brushed her skin, feather-light and impossibly warm. Catherine's breath hitched and she found herself unable to look away. This close, she could see the complexity in his eyes, layers of grief and determination, and something she could not name. "Tears are unnecessary," he said softly. "You have nothing to be ashamed of. The shame belongs entirely to Nathaniel Roth." She nodded, not trusting her voice. Richard held her gaze a moment longer, then withdrew, settling back into his seat. But the handkerchief remained in her hand, still warm from his touch, and Catherine clutched it as the coach carried them through the night toward whatever future awaited in the halls of Blackwood House. London passed in flashes of gaslight, each lamp briefly illuminating the coach's interior before plunging it back into shadow. Catherine sat rigid against the velvet cushions, hyper-aware of the man across from her. Richard Hale remained motionless, his face half in darkness, his walking stick resting between his knees like a scepter. The silence stretched between them, not uncomfortable, but weighted with unspoken questions. Catherine's mind raced through the events of the past hour. One moment she had been a respectable betrothed woman, the next a publicly scorned cast-off, and now she sat opposite a duke who had just proposed marriage as though negotiating a business contract. "I should explain the terms more fully," Richard said at last, his voice low and measured. "My solicitor, Mr. Fairchild, will handle the legal arrangements. Your father's debts will be purchased in their entirety. The creditors will have no further claim on him or his property." Catherine's throat tightened. How extensive are his debts? Richard's gaze held hers. Considerable. Gaming debts primarily, owed to several gentlemen's clubs. The largest portion is held by Nathaniel's father, Old Roth himself. He has been using those debts as leverage, I suspect, to secure advantageous business connections through your engagement. "So, I was collateral," Catherine said quietly. "Not a bride, merely a means to an end, as we all are, in our way." Richard's tone held no judgment, only a weary pragmatism. "Marriage among our class is rarely about affection. It is about alliances, property, and lineage. I'm simply being honest about what most pretend does not exist." The coach swayed as they turned onto a broader avenue. Catherine pressed her gloved hand against the window, feeling the cool glass through the fabric. Her reflection stared back at her, ghostly and uncertain. "And what of your lineage?" she asked, turning back to him. "You mentioned an heir. Is that the sole purpose of this arrangement?" Something flickered in Richard's expression, too quick to name. "My title requires continuity. I am the last of my line. When I die without issue, the dukedom passes to a distant cousin, who has neither the competence nor the character to manage the estates. Hundreds of people depend on those lands for their livelihoods. I will not let them suffer because I failed in my duty." There was steel in his words, but beneath it Catherine heard something else. Loss. Old and deep and carefully locked away. "What happened to your family?" The question left her lips before she could stop it. "Forgive me. That was impertinent." Richard was silent for a long moment. The coach lamps threw shifting patterns across his face, highlighting the aristocratic planes and the faint scar at his temple. When he finally spoke, his voice was carefully neutral. "A fire. 7 years ago at our country estate, Ravensmore, my mother and younger brother perished. I was in London at the time, attending to parliamentary business." He paused, his fingers tightening almost imperceptibly on the walking stick. "I inherited a title, 3 estates, and a house full of ghosts. I have not laughed since that night, Miss Vance. I tell you this so you understand what you are accepting. I am not a man who will fill your days with joy or romance. I am a man who honors his obligations and protects what is his." The raw honesty of it struck Catherine deeply. Here was a man as wounded as she, though his scars ran far deeper. She understood then that this arrangement was not about her specifically. It was about survival. His survival in whatever form a living man could manage when his heart had been burned away. "I am not looking for joy," she said softly. "I am looking for safety, for dignity, for a life where I am not measured against a ledger and found wanting. If you can offer me that, Richard, then perhaps we are better matched than either of us expected." His eyes met hers, and for a heartbeat, the distance between them seemed to shrink. She saw vulnerability there, quickly masked, and something that might have been gratitude. "You are stronger than I anticipated," he said. "Most women of your station would be weeping or pleading or demanding romantic assurances I cannot give. Most women of my station have not spent the last 2 years watching their father drink away the family fortune while pretending everything was fine." Catherine's voice held a bitter edge. "I learned to be practical, Your Grace. I learned that survival requires clear eyes and hard choices. You offer me both. I would be a fool to refuse, then you are no fool." Richard leaned forward slightly, and the lamplight caught the planes of his face. "The marriage will take place in 3 days' time. I have a special license that will allow us to wed in the private chapel at Blackwood House. The ceremony will be small, Witnesses only. No celebration. Catherine nodded. And after, what will you expect of me? You will manage the household as you see fit. I will not interfere with your domestic arrangements. You will have your own apartments in the West Wing, the rooms that were my mother's. They have been closed since her death, but Mrs. Alder, the housekeeper, will prepare them for your arrival tonight. Tonight, Catherine repeated, the reality of it settling over her like snow. I am to live in your house immediately. It would be improper otherwise, given that we are to be married so soon. Richard's tone was matter of fact, but something in his posture suggested tension. There will be no expectations placed upon you until after the wedding. You will be safe and undisturbed. The coach began to slow, and Catherine realized they must be approaching Blackwood House. Her heart began to race, a wild flutter against her ribs. This was happening, all of it. In 3 days, she would be a duchess. In 3 days, her life would be irrevocably altered. Richard, she said, using his given name deliberately, trying it on like a new garment. What if I cannot give you an heir? What if I am barren? His expression softened almost imperceptibly. Then we will deal with that circumstance if it arises. I am not a man who discards his commitments, Catherine. Once you are my wife, you will remain so, regardless of whether children come. You have my word on that. The coach came to a complete stop. Through the window, Catherine could see the imposing facade of Blackwood House rising into the night sky. Pale stone gleamed in the moonlight, and dozens of windows stared down like unblinking eyes. It was beautiful and intimidating in equal measure. Richard descended first, then turned to offer his hand. Catherine took it, and as she stepped down onto the cobblestones, she felt the world tilt slightly. This was real. This was her new life. They stood together in the cool night air, her hand still resting in his. Neither moved to break the contact. Richard looked down at her, his expression unreadable in the shadows. "Welcome to Blackwood House," he said quietly. "Welcome home, Catherine." She wanted to respond, but her throat had closed around unshed tears. Not tears of sorrow, but of overwhelming emotion she could not name. Relief and fear and strange, tentative hope all tangled together. Richard seemed to understand. He squeezed her hand gently just once, then released it and offered his arm instead. She took it, grateful for the support, and together they climbed the steps to the massive front door. A butler waited in the entrance hall, elderly and dignified, his face carefully neutral. "Hemmings," Richard said, "this is Miss Catherine Vance. She will be the Duchess of Blackwood within 3 days. Please ensure that Mrs. Alder has prepared the West Wing apartments and that Miss Vance has everything she requires. Your Grace." The butler bowed deeply, then turned to Catherine. "Miss Vance, welcome to Blackwood House. If you will follow me, I shall show you to your rooms." Catherine glanced at Richard, seeking some final reassurance. He met her gaze and gave the smallest nod, almost imperceptible. Then he reached into his coat and withdrew his handkerchief, the same one he had used to dry her tears in the coach. "Keep it," he said, pressing it into her palm. "You may have need of it in the days to come." Their fingers touched as he transferred the fabric, his bare skin against her gloved hand. The contact lasted only a moment, but Catherine felt warmth spread from that point of connection up her arm and into her chest. When she looked at his face, she saw that he too had felt something. His pupils had dilated slightly, and a faint color had risen along his cheekbones. He withdrew his hand quickly as though burned. "Good night, Catherine, rest well. Tomorrow we begin the practical arrangements." "Good night, Richard," she managed, her voice barely above a whisper. She followed Hemmings up the grand staircase, clutching the handkerchief like a lifeline. At the landing, she looked back. Richard still stood in the entrance hall, watching her ascent. The gaslight cast his face in sharp relief, all angles and shadows. He looked lonely, she thought, terribly achingly lonely. Then he turned away, walking deeper into the house with the measured tap of his walking stick against marble, and Catherine continued upward toward her new rooms, toward her new life, toward a future she could not yet imagine, but was determined to meet with courage. In her closed fist, the handkerchief still held the warmth of his touch. Morning light filtered through tall windows, painting the West Wing in pearl and gold. Catherine woke to unfamiliar surroundings, disoriented until memory returned. The ball. Nathaniel's betrayal, Richard's proposal. She took in the room that would be hers. Elegant furnishings layered with dust, as though waiting years for someone to claim them. Heavy blue velvet curtains framed windows overlooking wild gardens. A dark wardrobe stood against one wall, beside it a vanity with a clouded mirror. These had been his mother's rooms. Catherine felt the weight of that knowledge. She was stepping into a dead woman's space, trying to fill an absence that could never be filled. A knock interrupted her thoughts. "Come in." A middle-aged woman in black appeared, grey hair severely pulled back, her face kind despite stern lines. "Miss Vance, I am Mrs. Alder, the housekeeper. His Grace requests your presence in the study after breakfast. I have had a bath drawn and laid out clothing. Your belongings will be retrieved from your father's house today." "Thank you, Mrs. Alder." Catherine hesitated. "These rooms belong to the late Duchess." Mrs. Alder's expression softened. "They did, miss. A fine lady, gentle and generous. The house has not been the same since. His Grace ordered these apartments closed after the fire. You are the first to occupy them since." Catherine understood the significance. Richard had opened a sealed part of his life. Trust, perhaps, or desperation. An hour later, dressed in simple grey, Catherine navigated Blackwood House's corridors. The scale overwhelmed her. High ceilings with ornate plasterwork, stern ancestral portraits, rooms branching endlessly, beautiful and cold, a monument, not a home. She found the study, door ajar. Voices drifted through. Richard's low and controlled, another man's higher, anxious. "Your Grace, purchasing the Vance debts will be expensive. Old Roth will drive a hard bargain. Then we pay what he asks." Richard's tone held impatience. "I want those papers before the wedding. The lady's father will not enter her marriage with that sword hanging over him." Catherine's breath caught. He was already protecting her family. "And the marriage itself, Your Grace?" The unfamiliar voice continued. "This is rather sudden. Are you certain Miss Vance is appropriate for Duchess?" Dangerous silence followed. When Richard spoke, ice threaded his words. "Miss Vance is a woman of intelligence and dignity who has been treated abominably. She requires protection. I require an heir. The arrangement is perfectly suitable, Mr. Fairchild. I trust that is the last time you question my judgment. Of course, Your Grace." "My apologies." Catherine knocked loudly, giving them time to compose themselves. Richard stood behind a massive desk, covered with ledgers, expression unreadable. Beside him, a thin man with wire spectacles radiated nervous efficiency. "Ah, Catherine." Richard's shoulders relaxed slightly. "Please, come in. This is Mr. Fairchild, my solicitor. He will handle the legal aspects. Miss Vance." Fairchild bowed stiffly. "Congratulations on your forthcoming marriage." "Thank you." Catherine entered with composure, avoiding direct eye contact with Richard. Richard gestured to a chair. "Please, sit. We have matters to discuss." Catherine settled, aware of morning light illuminating Richard's profile. He looked tired. Dark circles shadowed his eyes. Sleepless night, she wondered, thinking of their bargain, or haunted by ghosts. "Mr. Fairchild has reviewed the financial arrangements." Richard's tone was businesslike. "Your father's debts total £12,000. The largest portion, £5,000, is held by Jeremiah Roth." Catherine's hands clenched. £5,000. No wonder the engagement had been pressed. She had been payment on a debt. "I will purchase all outstanding debts this week," Richard continued. "Your father will be informed his obligations transfer to me, and I will forgive them entirely. He will owe nothing. That is extraordinarily generous, Your Grace." Richard's gaze held hers. "It is practical. You cannot serve as my Duchess, distracted by your family's ruin. This resolves the matter." Fairchild cleared his throat. "There is also the marriage contract, Miss Vance. His Grace has been most generous. You will have £2,000 annually for personal use, control of household accounts, and upon His Grace's death, the London house, a country property of your choosing, plus £10,000. Catherine stared at Richard, stunned. This was far more than necessary. This was security, independence, a protected future. "Why?" she asked softly, forgetting Fairchild. "Why give me so much?" Richard's fingers tightened on the desk edge. "Because once you are mine, Catherine, I will not have you vulnerable ever again. Not to creditors, not to society's judgments, not to fate's whims. You will be protected in all ways I can provide." The intensity sent tremors through her. This was not the cold businessman from the coach. This spoke of old wounds and fierce determination. "If you will sign here, Miss Vance." Fairchild shuffled papers uncomfortably. Catherine took the pen. As she leaned forward, Richard moved, ostensibly to point out the correct line. His hand came to rest over hers, guiding the pen. The contact was electric, his palm warm against her hand, fingers curling slightly around hers. She felt unexpected calluses on his fingertips, evidence of some hidden aspect of him. Catherine's breath caught. She looked up, found Richard's face very close, his eyes fixed on their joined hands. For a moment that stretched like honey. Neither moved. She smelled sandalwood and ink, saw where his jaw met his collar, felt his breath against her temple. "Just there," he said, voice rougher than usual. "Your signature beside mine." Catherine signed, hand trembling. Richard held contact a moment longer before withdrawing, settling back with careful deliberation. "Excellent." Fairchild seemed oblivious. "The contracts are binding. I shall file them immediately. Thank you, Mr. Fairchild." Richard dismissed him. The solicitor departed, leaving them alone. Silence descended, heavy with awareness. Richard moved to the window, walking stick tapping softly. "There is one more thing you should know. The fire at Ravensmore was not an accident." Catherine's pulse quickened. "What do you mean?" "It was deliberately set. I have long suspected, though never proved it." He turned, expression haunted. "There were business rivals who resented my father. After his death, I inherited his enemies. The fire that killed my mother and brother may have been a message, a warning." "And Nathaniel's father?" Catherine asked. "Could he have been involved?" Richard's jaw tightened. "Old Roth was my father's primary competitor in shipping. There were irregularities, suggestions of sabotage. My father was investigating when he died suddenly. Heart failure, physicians said. I was 19, overwhelmed by grief. I let it rest. Perhaps that was a mistake." Catherine crossed to him, drawn by his pain. "You were mourning, Richard. You cannot blame yourself for not pursuing vengeance while barely surviving loss." He looked down, surprise flickering. "Most people tell me to let the past remain buried. You are the first to acknowledge that grief can paralyze as surely as any wound." "I understand loss." Catherine's voice was soft. "Perhaps not as profound as yours, but I understand how it changes you, how it builds walls." Richard's hand rose slowly, hesitating. Then, with deliberation, he touched her cheek with his fingertips. Just a whisper of contact, thumb grazing her cheekbone. "Thank you," he murmured, "for understanding, for accepting this arrangement despite its flaws, for being stronger than you should have to be." Catherine's eyes closed briefly. When she opened them, Richard watched her with an expression she could not read. Want and restraint, hope and fear, warring behind his mask. Then he stepped back, the moment breaking. "I should let you settle in. Mrs. Alder will show you the house. Make whatever changes you wish to the West Wing. It is yours now." Catherine nodded, though part of her wanted to close the distance he had created. She turned, then paused. "Richard," when he looked at her, she continued, "Thank you. For the contracts, for protecting my father, for these rooms. I know what they mean to you." His expression softened imperceptibly. "They are merely rooms, Catherine. You are giving them life again. That is worth far more than you know." She left with her heart beating strangely, his handkerchief in her pocket, the memory of his touch burning on her skin. 2 days passed in preparations. Catherine's belongings arrived from her father's house, pitifully few compared to the vast wardrobe. Mrs. Alder supervised unpacking, while Catherine explored her new domain. She heard Richard's footsteps sometimes, the distinctive tap of his walking stick against marble, but he did not seek her out. Distance was part of their arrangement. The loneliness, she told herself, was merely adjustment. On the 3rd morning, her wedding day, Catherine woke before dawn. No maid came to help. No mother offered tearful blessings. She bathed in solitude, then stood before the wardrobe. Mrs. Alder had procured a simple gown in cream silk, high-necked and elegant, appropriate for a quiet ceremony. She pinned her dark hair herself, leaving curls to frame her face. No veil, no orange blossoms. No pretense that this was anything but what Richard had named it, an arrangement. At 10 o'clock, Hemmings appeared. Miss Vance, His Grace awaits you in the chapel. Catherine followed through corridors she was learning to recognize. They descended a narrow staircase, emerging into a small stone chapel tucked into the eastern wing, beautiful in its simplicity. Wooden pews, white marble altar, stained glass casting colored light. Richard stood near the altar with the vicar, dressed entirely in black save for a white cravat. When he turned at her entrance, his expression was unreadable. Catherine walked forward, footsteps echoing. No music, no congregation, only Mr. Fairchild and Hemmings as witnesses. Richard's eyes traveled over her, taking in the cream gown, the simple hair. Something flickered in his expression before the mask descended. "Miss Vance," he said, extending his hand. "Your Grace." She placed her hand in his, feeling the familiar warmth through her glove. They turned to face the vicar, an elderly man with kind eyes. "Dearly beloved," he began, "we are gathered to witness the union of Richard Hale, Duke of Blackwood, and Catherine Vance in holy matrimony." Catherine heard herself make the required responses, felt Richard's hand tighten when she promised to honor and obey. His voice, speaking vows, was steady and clear, betraying nothing. The vicar produced the ring, gold set with small diamonds. Richard took Catherine's left hand, removing her glove with careful precision. His fingers were warm against her bare skin as he slid the ring on. "With this ring, I thee wed," his voice was low, meant only for her. "With my body I thee worship, and with all my worldly goods I thee endow." Catherine looked up, startled by the intimacy despite their ceremonial nature. Richard's eyes met hers, and for a heartbeat she saw something vulnerable. Then it vanished. "I now pronounce you man and wife." The vicar smiled. "You may kiss the bride." Richard's jaw tightened. He released her hand and instead lifted it to his lips, pressing a formal kiss to her knuckles. Brief, correct, utterly devoid of passion. "Congratulations, Your Grace." The vicar addressed Catherine with her new title. "May your union be blessed." They signed papers. The marriage register, declaring Catherine Vance was now Catherine Hale, Duchess of Blackwood. Their names together on parchment, bound by ink and law. The ceremony concluded swiftly. Richard offered his arm, escorting her back through the house. They shared silent luncheon. Catherine pushed food around her plate, appetite absent. Richard ate methodically, fueling his body like another duty. "Will you require anything this afternoon?" he asked. "I have estate business, but Mrs. Alder is at your disposal." "I shall be fine. Perhaps I will explore the gardens." Richard nodded. "This evening," he paused, choosing words carefully. "This evening we will fulfill the remaining obligations. I will come to your rooms after dinner." Catherine's breath caught. She had known this moment would arrive. "I understand." His eyes searched her face. "I will not hurt you, Catherine. You have my word." "I know." And she did know. Whatever else Richard might be, he was not cruel. They parted, Richard disappearing into his study while Catherine made for the gardens. The afternoon passed in nerves and strange anticipation. She walked among overgrown roses, trying to calm her racing heart. Dinner was silent. Catherine wore a dressing gown of deep blue silk, appropriate for a wedding night. She picked at roasted chicken, tasting nothing. Richard watched from across the table with something like concern. "You are afraid," he said quietly. "Not afraid. Uncertain, perhaps. This is not how I imagined such things, nor I." Richard's admission surprised her, "But we will navigate it together." After dinner, Catherine returned to the West Wing. She dismissed the maid, wanting solitude, brushed out her hair, letting it fall in dark waves, removed the dressing gown to reveal a nightdress of white lawn, modest but feminine. Waited. The knock came at 10 o'clock. "Come in," she called. Richard entered, closing the door softly. He had changed. Dark trousers, white shirt open at the collar, no cravat. hair slightly disordered. He looked younger, less intimidating duke and more simply man. "Catherine," he said, and the way he spoke her name sent warmth through her. She stood from the bed edge, uncertain what to do with her hands. Richard crossed to her, moving without his walking stick, though she noticed the slight favor he gave his left leg. He stopped close enough that she could feel his warmth. "This need not be unpleasant. I will be as gentle as circumstances allow." "I trust you," Catherine whispered, and realized it was true. Richard's hand cupped her face, thumb brushing her cheekbone. Then he leaned down, his lips meeting hers in a kiss that was soft, exploratory, carefully controlled. Catherine's eyes fluttered closed. Her hands rested on his chest, feeling the solid warmth beneath thin shirt. The kiss deepened slightly, Richard's arm sliding around her waist to draw her closer. She felt the tension in his body, the quickening of his breath. When he pulled back, his eyes were darker. "Lie down," he said, not command, but gentle instruction. Catherine complied, settling against pillows while Richard extinguished all but one lamp. He joined her, his weight pressing down the mattress. What followed was careful. Richard removed her nightdress with practiced efficiency, his touch clinical despite intimacy. Catherine lay still, trying not to tremble as he positioned himself above her. His body was lean and muscled, marked with scars, evidence of a past she did not know. "This will hurt briefly," he murmured against her hair. "I am sorry for it." The joining was controlled and measured. Richard moved with care, pausing when she gasped, allowing her body to adjust. Pain flared sharp, then faded to discomfort. Catherine gripped his shoulders, feeling muscle flex beneath her palms as he began to move. It was not painful once the initial breach passed, but neither was it pleasurable. It was duty performed, obligation fulfilled. Richard's breathing grew labored, movements more urgent. Then he stilled, a low sound escaping his throat. He withdrew carefully, rolling to the side. For a moment they lay in silence, breathing gradually slowing. Then Richard rose, crossing to the washstand. He returned and cleaned her with gentle efficiency. "Are you well?" he asked, settling beside her. "I am well." Richard's hand found hers in the darkness, fingers intertwining. This becomes easier, more comfortable, with familiarity. Catherine turned her head, seeing his profile in dim lamplight. In that moment, lying in the aftermath, she felt the first stirring of something beyond respect. Not love, not yet, but the possibility of connection. "Richard?" she whispered. "Yes? Stay. Just for tonight." His fingers tightened on hers. He did not speak, but he did not leave. They lay together in darkness, hands joined, as Catherine drifted into sleep with the warmth of his presence beside her. Catherine woke to find Richard gone, only the lingering warmth of his body beside her proof he had stayed at all. Morning light filtered through the curtains, painting the room in soft gold. She touched the space where he had lain, feeling the indent in the pillow, and something in her chest tightened unexpectedly. The following days established a pattern. Richard came to her rooms 3 more nights, fulfilling what he saw as his duty to ensure succession. Each time was careful, controlled, his touch gentle but distant. He did not stay after, though Catherine found herself wishing he would. During the day, they maintained polite distance, meeting only at meals where conversation remained formal and sparse. But Catherine was not content with distance. She was mistress of this house now, duchess in truth, and she refused to let Blackwood House remain a mausoleum. She began with the windows. Every morning, she had the staff open curtains that had been drawn for years, letting sunlight flood forgotten rooms. Dust motes danced in the beams, and Catherine imagined she could feel the house sigh with relief. "Mrs. Alder," Catherine said one afternoon, finding the housekeeper in the linen closet, "I want to reopen the conservatory." The housekeeper's hand stilled on the sheets she was folding. "The conservatory, Your Grace? It has been closed since the late Duchess passed. His Grace ordered it sealed. Then it is time to unseal it." Catherine's voice was firm but kind. "A house should not be a tomb, Mrs. Alder. Life must continue even after loss." Mrs. Alder studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "You are very much like her, you know, the late Duchess." She had that same gentle determination. "Very well, Your Grace." I shall have the staff begin preparations." The conservatory, when its doors were finally opened, took Catherine's breath away. A glass structure attached to the south wing, it was filled with raised beds of earth where plants had once flourished. Now only dried stems and tangled weeds remained, but the bones of beauty were still there. Catherine spent hours in that space, clearing debris, turning soil, coaxing life back into the forgotten garden. She ordered bulbs and seeds from London nurseries, hyacinths for their scent, roses for their persistence, lavender for remembrance. One afternoon, covered in soil up to her elbows, she looked up to find Richard standing in the conservatory doorway. He leaned on his walking stick, watching her with an expression she could not read. "You have been busy," he said. Catherine wiped her hands on her apron, suddenly aware of how disheveled she must look. "I hope you do not mind. Mrs. Halder said this was your mother's favorite place." Richard stepped into the conservatory, his gaze traveling over the cleared beds, the new plants already beginning to take root. "I had forgotten how it looked when there was life here." His voice was quiet, almost wondering. "My mother could make anything grow. She said plants responded to love and attention, that they knew when someone cared. She sounds like a remarkable woman." She was. Richard moved closer, reaching out to touch the leaves of a young rosebush Catherine had planted. "When she died, I ordered this place closed. I could not bear to see it empty." "And now?" Catherine asked softly. Richard's eyes met hers. "Now I think perhaps it was wrong to lock away beauty simply because it reminded me of loss." He paused, then added, "You are changing this house, Catherine, bringing light where there has been only shadow. Is that a complaint, Your Grace?" A faint smile touched his lips, so brief she might have imagined it. "No, it is an observation. And perhaps," he hesitated, "a thank you." Their eyes held for a long moment. Catherine felt her pulse quicken. Richard stood close enough that she could smell the sandalwood scent she had come to associate with him, could see the silver threading through the dark hair at his temples. "Your hands," he said suddenly, reaching out to take one of hers. "You have injured yourself." Catherine looked down to see small cuts across her fingers from the rose thorns. "Oh, I had not noticed." Richard's thumb traced carefully around one of the cuts, his touch feather-light. "Come, we should tend to these." He led her from the conservatory to his study, a room she had not yet entered. Dark wood paneling, floor-to-ceiling bookcases, a massive desk covered in ledgers and correspondence, but also, she noticed, maps. Nautical charts covering one entire wall, marking shipping routes and trade winds. "You were a sailor," she said with sudden realization. "The calluses on your hands, the maps. You went to sea." Richard retrieved a small medical kit from a drawer, gesturing for her to sit. "After my father died, yes, I needed to understand the business that had been his life. I spent 2 years aboard our ships, learning navigation, trade routes, the management of crew." His hands were gentle as he cleaned her cuts with a dampened cloth. "My mother hated it, feared I would be lost as my father had been lost to the sea, metaphorically if not literally. But I needed to know, Catherine, needed to understand what he had built, what I was meant to protect." He applied salve to her cuts, his movements precise and careful. Catherine watched his face, seeing the concentration there, the way his jaw tightened slightly when he touched a particularly deep scratch. "Did you find what you were looking for?" she asked. "Knowledge, yes, understanding, perhaps." Richard's eyes lifted to hers, but not peace. That remained elusive. "And what of now? Are you still searching?" His hand stilled on hers, their fingers nearly touching. "I do not know. These past weeks since you arrived, I have felt," he seemed to struggle for words, "less adrift. As though perhaps there is possibility in the present, rather than only ghosts in the past." Catherine's breath caught. "Richard," she whispered. He pulled back slightly as though catching himself. "The wounds are clean. They should heal without complication." But he did not release her hand immediately. Instead, his thumb traced a slow circle on her palm, a gesture so intimate it sent warmth flooding through her. Catherine's fingers curled slightly, as if to hold the touch, and Richard's eyes darkened. "Catherine," he began, voice rougher than usual. The study door opened without warning. Hemmings appeared, looking apologetic. "Your Grace, forgive the intrusion. Mr. Fairchild has arrived with urgent documents regarding the Roth matter." The moment shattered. Richard stepped back, his expression closing. "Show him in, Hemmings." Catherine rose, suddenly aware of how inappropriate her appearance must be, covered in soil and wearing a simple work dress. "I should go. Let you attend to business." Richard's hand caught her wrist gently. "Tonight," he said quietly, too low for Hemmings to hear. "Come to dinner at 8. I find I would prefer company to solitude." It was the first time he had actively sought her presence beyond duty. Catherine felt something flutter in her chest. "I will be there." She left the study as Fairchild entered, the solicitor bowing deeply. As she climbed the stairs to her rooms, Catherine touched the palm where Richard's thumb had traced that slow circle. Her skin still tingled from the contact. Mrs. Alder met her in the West Wing, taking in her disheveled state with knowing eyes. "The conservatory suits you, Your Grace. You have color in your cheeks, life in your eyes." "It is good to have purpose," Catherine replied. "Purpose, yes." Mrs. Alder smiled. "And perhaps something else as well. His Grace came to watch you working this afternoon. I have not seen him set foot in that conservatory since the fire. You are reaching him, my lady. Slowly, but surely." That evening, Catherine dressed with unusual care, a gown of deep green silk that brought out the color in her eyes, her hair arranged in soft curls, a touch of rose oil at her wrists and throat. When she entered the dining room at 8, Richard was already there. He had changed into evening clothes, his cravat precisely tied, his dark coat fitted perfectly. But when he saw her, something shifted in his expression. His eyes traveled over her, lingering on the curve of her neck, the fall of her hair. "Catherine," he said, and the way he spoke her name made her pulse race. "You look," he paused, "quite lovely." "Thank you." She took her seat, acutely aware of how his gaze followed her movements. Dinner was different that night. Richard asked about the conservatory, about her plans for the gardens. She told him of the varieties she hoped to grow, the way she wanted to train roses along the glass walls. He listened with genuine interest, his attention fully focused on her. "My mother kept a journal," he said over dessert, detailed notes about every plant she cultivated, their needs and peculiarities. "It is in the library, if you would find it useful." "I would treasure it," Catherine said honestly. After dinner, Richard offered his arm. "Walk with me." They moved through the house together, their steps naturally matching. Richard led her to the library, a vast room lined with leather-bound volumes. He found the journal easily, a worn book with pressed flowers still marking certain pages. "Take it," he said, placing it in her hands. "Use it as she would have wanted." Catherine held the book carefully, aware she was holding a piece of his mother's life. "Thank you, Richard, for trusting me with this." He looked at her in the lamplight, his expression unguarded for once. "You make it easy to trust, Catherine. You do not demand or manipulate. You simply exist, with grace and strength." "It is," he seemed to search for words, refreshing. Catherine's eyes stung unexpectedly. No one had ever spoken to her quite that way, as though she were valuable simply for being herself. Richard's hand came up, cupping her face with a tenderness that made her heart ache. "Catherine," he whispered, and then he was kissing her. Not the controlled, dutiful kisses of their nights together, but something deeper. His lips moved against hers with genuine feeling, and Catherine responded instinctively, rising on her toes to meet him. The journal slipped from her fingers, forgotten, as Richard's arms came around her, pulling her close. They stood in the lamplight library, kissing with a passion neither had allowed themselves before, and Catherine felt the walls between them begin to crack. The kiss in the library changed everything and nothing. Richard still maintained careful distance during the day, but his eyes followed Catherine now with undisguised warmth. At dinner, their conversations deepened beyond pleasantries. He told her about his shipping concerns, the complexities of maritime law. She shared her love of books, the philosophies she had studied in her father's neglected library. And at night, when he came to her rooms, there was new tenderness. His hands lingered on her skin. His kisses grew deeper, more searching. The mechanical duty of their early encounters transformed into something resembling intimacy, though neither spoke the words that might define it. London society, meanwhile, had not forgotten the spectacle at Clarendon House. Invitations arrived daily at Blackwood House, each more elaborate than the last. Lady Pemberton requested their presence at her autumn ball. Lord Ashworth invited them to a dinner party. The Duchess of Marlborough hoped they would attend her musicale. Richard ignored them all, tossing the gilt-edged cards into the fire without comment. Catherine watched the invitations burn, understanding his reluctance but feeling the weight of isolation. "We cannot hide forever," she said one evening, watching another invitation curl into ash. "Society will interpret our absence as shame, as though we have something to apologize for." Richard's jaw tightened. "I care nothing for society's opinions. But I must care, Richard. I am your Duchess now. My behavior reflects on you, on your family name. If I never appear in public, people will say you are ashamed of me, that Nathaniel was right to cast me aside." He turned from the fire, his eyes blazing. "Nathaniel Roth is a fool and a coward. Anyone who believes his assessment of you shares his stupidity. Then prove it." Catherine moved closer, placing her hand on his arm. "Appear with me in public. Show London that you chose me, that you are proud to have me as your wife." Richard covered her hand with his expression conflicted. "You do not know what you ask. Society can be cruel, Catherine, vicious. I would protect you from that. I have already endured cruelty. I survived it." She squeezed his arm gently. "Please, Richard, let me be your Duchess in truth, not just within these walls." He studied her for a long moment, then sighed. "Very well. The Royal Opera House is presenting Don Giovanni next week. We will attend." Catherine felt a mix of triumph and trepidation. "Thank you." That night she lay awake long after Richard had left her bed, staring at the ceiling and wondering what they would face when they stepped back into London's glittering, judgmental world. The answer came sooner than expected, and not in the form she anticipated. 3 days before the opera, a letter arrived. No seal, no return address, delivered by a messenger who disappeared before Hemmings could question him. The butler brought it directly to Richard in his study, where Catherine had been reviewing household accounts. Richard opened the letter, his expression darkening as he read. His hand clenched on the paper, crumpling the edges. "What is it?" Catherine asked, alarmed by his reaction. Without a word, he passed her the letter. The handwriting was angular, aggressive, the ink pressed deep into the paper as though written in rage. "Your Grace," it read, "you may have purchased my bride, but you cannot purchase my silence. Every debt has its reckoning, every insult demands payment. You will learn that some prices are paid in more than gold. Consider this a warning. The next message will not be so gentle." It was unsigned, but the implication was clear. "Nathaniel," Catherine whispered, her hands beginning to tremble. Richard took the letter back, his expression cold and controlled in a way that frightened her more than anger would have. "He's attempting intimidation, trying to make us feel unsafe in our own home." Catherine wrapped her arms around herself. "What if he does more than threaten? What if he—" She could not finish the sentence. Richard crossed to her immediately, pulling her into his arms. "Listen to me, he will not touch you, I will not allow it." His embrace was fierce, protective. "I will have men stationed around the house. You will not go anywhere without escort. And Mr. Fairchild will investigate the source of this letter, find proof of Nathaniel's involvement." But Catherine could not stop shaking. The fear was not just for herself, but for Richard, for the life they were beginning to build together. Everything felt suddenly fragile, as though one strong wind could shatter it all. Richard held her tighter, one hand coming up to cradle the back of her head. "Catherine, look at me." She lifted her eyes to his face, seeing the intensity there, the fierce determination. "I swore to protect you," he said quietly. "That was not an empty promise. You are mine now, Catherine. Mine to cherish, mine to defend. No one will harm you while I draw breath. Do you understand?" The possessiveness in his words should have troubled her, but instead it sent warmth flooding through her chest. "Yes," she whispered. He kissed her then, hard and claiming, as though sealing his vow with his body. When he pulled back, his eyes were dark with emotion. "Burn the letter," We will not let him poison our peace with fear." That evening, as Catherine dressed for dinner, Mrs. Alder arrived with a velvet box. "His Grace asked me to bring this to you, Your Grace." "For the opera." Catherine opened the box and gasped. Inside lay a necklace of sapphires, each stone the deep blue of midnight, set in intricate silverwork. It was breathtaking, clearly an heirloom of significant value. "This belonged to the late Duchess," Mrs. Alder said softly. "His Grace's mother wore it on her wedding day, and every important occasion after. He has not opened that box since her death." Catherine's throat tightened. She could not accept something so precious, so laden with memory and meaning. But before she could protest, Richard appeared in her doorway. "Do not refuse," he said, reading her expression. "It should be worn, Catherine. Treasured. My mother would have wanted you to have it." "Richard, this is too much." "It should be saved for," she hesitated, "for someone you love." His expression softened in a way she had never seen before. "And who is to say I do not?" He crossed the room, taking the necklace from the box. "Turn around." Catherine obeyed, her heart hammering. Richard's hands were steady as he fastened the clasp at her nape, his fingers brushing the sensitive skin there. The sapphires settled against her collarbone, cool and weighty. "Look," he murmured, turning her to face the mirror. Catherine stared at her reflection. The sapphires gleamed against her pale skin, transforming her simple evening gown into something regal. But it was not the jewelry that held her attention. It was Richard's face behind her, the way he looked at her, as though she were precious, as though she mattered beyond contracts and duty. "Perfect," he said quietly, and the word felt like more than a comment on her appearance. His hands rested on her shoulders, thumbs tracing small circles through the fabric of her gown. Catherine met his eyes in the mirror. "Are you certain about the opera? We could stay here, where it is safe." "We could," Richard agreed. "But you were right. We cannot hide. And I find—" He turned her to face him, his hands cupping her face. "I find I want the world to see you, to know that you are mine, that I am yours. Let them whisper and speculate. We know the truth." "And what is the truth?" Catherine asked, barely breathing. Richard's thumb traced her lower lip, his gaze intense. "The truth is that you have become essential to me, Catherine, more than I thought possible, more than I have words to express." Catherine's eyes filled with tears. "Richard, do not cry," he whispered, kissing the corner of each eye. "Unless they are happy tears." "They are," she assured him. "I did not think when I accepted your arrangement that I would find this. Nor did I." Richard rested his forehead against hers. "But I am grateful for it, Catherine. Grateful for you." They stood wrapped in each other, the sapphires gleaming between them like a promise made tangible. That night, when Richard came to her rooms, something had shifted again. His touch was reverent, his kisses slow and deep. They made love not as strangers fulfilling obligation, but as two people discovering the shape of genuine feeling. And afterward, without asking, Richard stayed, his arms wrapped around Catherine as she drifted into sleep. The night of the opera arrived with unseasonable warmth. Blackwood House blazed with light, every chandelier burning, staff moving with practiced efficiency. Catherine stood before her mirror, hardly recognizing herself. Emerald velvet showcased her shoulders and the elegant line of her neck. Silver ribbon threaded through her hair matched the sapphires at her throat. She looked like a duchess. She felt terrified. "Your Grace," Mrs. Alder said, her voice warm, "you are magnificent." "I hope society agrees," Catherine replied, attempting levity despite her nerves. "They will have no choice. You wear that necklace as though born to it." When Catherine descended the grand staircase, Richard waited in the entrance hall. He looked up, and his carefully controlled expression cracked completely, revealing naked admiration and something deeper that made her breath catch. "Catherine," he said, voice rough, "you are magnificent." She reached the bottom and he took her hand, raising it to his lips. But instead of a formal kiss, his lips lingered, his eyes never leaving hers. "Are you ready?" he asked quietly. "No," Catherine admitted, "but I will do this anyway." That is the definition of courage. Action, in spite of fear. He offered his arm, and you will not face it alone." The carriage ride passed too quickly. Richard held her hand, his thumb tracing reassuring circles on her palm. When they stopped before Covent Garden's grand entrance, Catherine saw the crowd gathering. Society's elite, each person a potential judge. Richard squeezed her hand. "Chin up, my Duchess. Let them see strength and grace and fire." Catherine stepped from the carriage into the glare of 100 curious eyes. Murmurs started immediately, rippling through the crowd. There she is, the one who was cast aside. Blackwood's Duchess now. Look at those sapphires. Richard's hand found the small of her back possessive. They climbed the steps together. But Richard's presence, solid and unwavering, gave her courage. Inside, the opera house was a palace of red velvet and gold leaf. Their box was positioned for optimal viewing and maximum visibility. Everyone would see them. That was the point. As they took their seats, Catherine became aware of stares from other boxes. Opera glasses trained on them, fans fluttering. She felt exposed, but Richard's hand found hers beneath the armrest. "Ignore them," he murmured. "Watch the stage." But before the curtain rose, commotion drew attention to a box directly across. Nathaniel Roth had arrived, his father beside him. The old man looked granite hard and furious. Nathaniel himself appeared ill, face pale and drawn, eyes fevered. Richard's entire body tensed. Catherine glanced at his face and saw cold fury barely controlled. "Richard," she whispered, "do not let him provoke you." Nathaniel was staring at them, his expression twisted with rage. When he caught Catherine's eye, he raised champagne in mocking salute. She felt Richard's muscles coil. The lights dimmed, saving them from immediate conflict. The orchestra swelled, and the curtain rose on Don Giovanni. Catherine tried to focus on the glorious music, but remained painfully aware of Nathaniel's malevolent attention. At intermission, society descended. Their box filled with visitors, carefully calibrated in approach. Some offered genuine congratulations. Others came to assess and gossip. "Your Grace," Lady Pemberton said, fan fluttering. "What a surprise to see you out, and wearing such remarkable jewels." "They were my mother's," Richard replied before Catherine could speak. "I thought it fitting my Duchess should wear them. She honors the memory beautifully." The pointed reminder effectively silenced several critical matrons. But Lord Ashworth, emboldened by champagne, made a mistake. Unfortunate business, that broken engagement. Though I suppose things worked out rather well. He smirked at Catherine, trading up, as it were. Richard stood so quickly people stepped back. "My wife's character and dignity are beyond reproach. The only unfortunate business was that she wasted time on a man so lacking in honor as Nathaniel Roth." The box went silent. Ashworth paled, realizing his miscalculation. But the real explosion came from across the theater. Nathaniel, clearly drunk, stood in his box, voice loud and slurred. "Honor! The great Duke of Blackwood speaks of honor. Tell them how your family built their fortune. Tell them about the ships your father sabotaged, the competitors he destroyed, the fires he set." Richard went absolutely still. Catherine felt the tremor that ran through him, saw color drain from his face. Around them, the opera house fell silent. Nathaniel continued, emboldened. "My father has evidence, ledgers, witness statements. Your precious father was a criminal, Blackwood. And the fire at Ravensmore." His voice took on cruel edge. "Perhaps that was justice. Perhaps your family finally paid for their sins." Catherine watched Richard struggle with rage and old grief. Without thinking, she stood, moving beside him. She took his hand, threading her fingers through his, and turned to face Nathaniel. Her voice rang clear through the silent theater. "Mr. Roth, you speak of evidence, yet present none. You make accusations fueled by bitterness and drink. If your father has proof of wrongdoing, let him present it to authorities. Otherwise, these are merely desperate ravings of a man who lost what he could not appreciate." She squeezed Richard's hand, then continued, gaze sweeping the crowd. "I was engaged to Mr. Roth. I know his character, his cruelty, his capacity for deception. When he cast me aside in public, he showed you who he truly is. The Duke of Blackwood offered me protection, dignity, and partnership. We have built something honorable together. Let history judge which man acted with integrity. Profound silence followed. Then, slowly, someone began to applaud. The Duchess of Marlborough stood in her box, clapping deliberately. Others joined. Not everyone, but enough. The tide had turned. Nathaniel's face contorted with fury. "This is not over," he shouted. "You will both pay for this humiliation." Security guards moved toward the Roth box. The opera director appeared, apologizing profusely. Nathaniel was escorted from the building, his threats echoing off gilded walls. Richard turned to Catherine, eyes blazing with emotion. "What you just did, standing beside me, defending us." He lifted her hand to his lips, kissing her knuckles with such reverence that ladies sighed audibly. "You are extraordinary, Catherine. Absolutely extraordinary." "We defend each other," she replied simply. "That is what marriage means, what partnership means." The lights dimmed for the second act. As they returned to their seats, Richard held her hand openly, defiantly. His Duchess, his partner, his. The opera continued, but Catherine barely registered it. She was aware only of Richard beside her, his hand warm in hers, and the knowledge that they had faced society together and survived. When the final curtain fell and they walked through the crowded lobby toward their carriage, Catherine felt the shift in how people looked at them. Not with pity or judgment, but with something approaching respect, perhaps even admiration. In the carriage, as London rolled past in gaslight and shadow, Richard pulled Catherine into his arms. He kissed her deeply, thoroughly, pouring everything he could not say into that kiss. Gratitude, admiration, desire, and perhaps, though neither spoke it yet, the first stirrings of love. The carriage could not move fast enough. Richard and Catherine sat pressed together on the velvet seat, his arm around her waist, her head resting against his shoulder. Neither spoke. Words seemed inadequate for what hummed between them, this electric awareness that had been building for weeks and now demanded resolution. When they arrived at Blackwood House, Richard helped her down with careful courtesy, but his hand lingered at her waist, his thumb tracing small circles through the velvet of her gown. Hemmings opened the door, his expression carefully neutral as he took their coats. "Will you require anything, Your Grace?" "No," Richard replied, his voice rough. "That will be all. The staff may retire for the evening." "Very good, sir." They climbed the stairs together, still silent. Catherine's heart raced, but not with fear, with anticipation, with need. Tonight felt different from all the nights before. Tonight there were no contracts, no obligations. Only two people who had chosen each other, who had defended each other, who had discovered something precious in the midst of arrangement and duty. At the door to the West Wing, Richard paused. "Catherine," he began, then seemed to lose words. "May I, that is, would you?" He stopped, frustration crossing his features. "I'm making a disaster of this." Catherine reached up, touching his face gently. "Richard." "Yes." He searched her eyes. "Yes? Yes to whatever you are trying to ask. Yes to being with you tonight. Yes to all of it." His expression transformed, vulnerability and desire mingling in equal measure. He opened the door to her chambers, and they entered together. The room glowed with lamplight, the bed turned down invitingly, everything prepared as though the house itself had been waiting for this moment. Richard turned to Catherine, lifting his hands to her face, cradling it with infinite gentleness. "Tonight," he said quietly, "is not about duty or succession or any of the practical reasons we married. Tonight is about us, about this extraordinary thing that has grown between us." Catherine's breath caught. "What is this thing?" she whispered. Richard's thumb traced her lower lip, his eyes darkening. "I think you know. I think you have known for some time, as I have known." But saying it aloud, naming it, that requires a courage I am only now finding. "Then let me say it first." Catherine's hands came up to cover his. "I love you, Richard. I did not expect to. I did not think it possible when we began. But somewhere between the coach ride from Clarendon House and tonight at the opera, between your careful protection and your tentative trust, I fell completely, irrevocably in love with you." Richard closed his eyes briefly, as though her words caused him physical pain, or perhaps relief so profound it mimicked pain. When he opened them again, they glistened with unshed tears. "Catherine," he said, his voice breaking slightly. "Catherine, I love you. So deeply it terrifies me. I thought I had buried the capacity for such feeling with my family at Ravensmore. But you," he kissed her forehead, her cheeks, the corner of her mouth, "you brought me back to life. You made me believe in possibility again." "Then stop talking," Catherine murmured against his lips, "and show me." The kiss that followed was nothing like the controlled encounters of previous nights. This was fire and passion, years of loneliness and longing poured into the connection of lips and breath and touch. Richard's hands moved to her hair, pulling free the pins until dark waves cascaded over her shoulders. Catherine's fingers worked at the buttons of his waistcoat, suddenly desperate to feel his skin against hers. They broke apart only long enough for Richard to shrug out of his coat and waistcoat, for Catherine to turn so he could unlace her gown. His fingers trembled slightly as he worked the fastenings, and she loved him more for that trembling, for the evidence that he was as affected as she. The emerald velvet pooled at her feet. Richard's hand spanned her waist over the thin chemise, and she felt the heat of his palms through the fabric. He pressed his lips to her shoulder, the curve of her neck, the sensitive spot behind her ear that made her gasp. "I want to memorize you," he murmured against her skin. "Every curve, every texture, every sound you make. I want this night to last forever." Catherine turned in his arms, reaching up to unbutton his shirt. "Then we should not waste it on talking." She pushed the linen from his shoulders, revealing the lean muscle beneath, the scars she had glimpsed before but never fully examined. There was one across his ribs, another on his left shoulder, evidence of a life she was still learning about. "Tell me," she said, tracing the scar on his ribs. "A storm off the Cape. Rigging came loose, caught me across the side." Richard's breath hitched as her fingers explored. "Hurt like the devil, but taught me to respect the sea's power." Catherine pressed her lips to the scar, feeling him shudder beneath the touch. "And this?" She moved to his shoulder. "Foolish youth. A duel I should not have fought." His hands tangled in her hair. "Catherine, if you continue, I will not be able to maintain any semblance of control." "Good," she whispered. "I do not want your control tonight. I want your passion, your truth. All of you, Richard, without walls or restraint." Something broke in him then. He lifted her easily, carrying her to the bed, laying her down with a gentleness that contrasted with the fire in his eyes. He removed her chemise slowly, reverently, his gaze traveling over her bare skin with such intensity she felt it like a physical touch. "You are so beautiful," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "So perfect. How did I become so fortunate?" Catherine reached for him, pulling him down beside her. "We are both fortunate. We found each other in the midst of everything that tried to break us." Richard kissed her again, his hands exploring with new freedom. He touched her as though she were precious, as though every inch of her skin deserved worship. His lips followed his hands, tracing paths of fire down her throat, across her collarbone, to the swell of her breasts. Catherine arched into his touch, her own hands exploring the planes of his back, the lean muscle of his arms. When he finally positioned himself above her, his eyes met hers with a question. "Yes," she breathed, "always yes." This time, when they joined, it was not duty or obligation. It was choice and desire and love made physical. Richard moved slowly, deeply, his gaze never leaving hers. Catherine wrapped her legs around him, pulling him closer, matching his rhythm. Their breaths synchronized, their heartbeats thundered in tandem. Richard's hand found hers, their fingers lacing together beside her head. The other hand traced her face, her lips, as though committing every detail to memory. Catherine felt pleasure building, spiraling through her body in waves she had never experienced before. She tightened around him, gasping his name. "Let go," he murmured against her ear. "I have you. I will always have you." His words pushed her over the edge. Pleasure crashed through her, stealing her breath, making her cry out. Richard followed moments later, his body tensing, her name a prayer on his lips as he found his release. They lay tangled together afterward, skin against skin, hearts gradually slowing to normal rhythm. Richard pressed kisses to Catherine's temple, her cheek, her lips. His hand traced lazy patterns on her hip. "I love you," he said again, as though the words were new and he needed to practice them. I love you, Catherine. My wife, my Duchess, my heart. Catherine nestled closer, her hand over his heart, feeling it beat strong and steady. And I love you, Richard, always. They fell asleep that way, wrapped in each other, the sapphire necklace still gleaming on the bedside table, witness to the transformation of a marriage of convenience into something far more precious. Outside, London slept, but inside Blackwood House, in the Duchess's chambers, two souls who had been lost had finally found home. Dawn broke over Blackwood House with deceptive serenity. Catherine woke wrapped in Richard's arms, his breath warm against her hair, and for a moment believed the world might be kind. They had faced society together. They had claimed their love. Surely nothing could touch them now. But peace, she was learning, was always temporary. The knock came as they were sharing breakfast in her rooms, an intimacy that felt both ordinary and miraculous. Richard had insisted on having food brought up, rather than breaking the cocoon of their private world. They sat close together, feeding each other bites of toast and jam, laughing softly at nothing in particular. Hemmings appeared at the door, his face ashen. Your Grace, forgive the intrusion. There is urgent news from Ravensmore. Richard's expression hardened instantly, the contentment of moments before vanishing. What news? A fire, sir. The messenger says the chapel is burning. And, Hemmings hesitated, there have been reports of an intruder on the grounds. A man matching the description of Nathaniel Roth. Catherine felt ice flood her veins. Richard was already standing, his body taut with barely controlled fury. Ready the fastest carriage. We leave immediately. Your Grace, I should come with you, Catherine began. No. Richard turned to her, his expression fierce. You will remain here where it is safe. Absolutely not. Catherine stood, facing him with equal determination. We face threats together, Richard. That is what we decided last night. I will not hide while you walk into danger. For a moment they stood at an impasse, wills clashing. Then Richard's expression softened slightly. You are the most stubborn woman I have ever encountered, and you love me for it. Despite everything, he almost smiled. Yes, God help me, I do. Very well. But you stay close to me, and if I tell you to run, you run. Agreed? Agreed. They dressed quickly, Catherine changing into a practical traveling dress, while Richard armed himself with a pistol from his study. The carriage ride to Ravensmore took 2 hours, each minute stretching like eternity. Richard sat rigid, his jaw clenched, one hand gripping his walking stick while the other held Catherine's. Tell me about Ravensmore, Catherine said softly, trying to distract him from dark thoughts. Richard's eyes remained fixed on the window. It was our family estate, where I spent my childhood, where I was meant to be happy. His voice was hollow. The fire 7 years ago destroyed the main house. Only the old chapel survived somehow. I rebuilt the house, but I could never bring myself to return. Too many ghosts. And now Nathaniel threatens even that. His hand tightened on hers. If he has harmed my family's resting place, if he has desecrated the chapel where my mother and brother, he could not finish. Catherine squeezed back. We will stop him, Richard. Together. They arrived as dusk was falling, and Catherine's first glimpse of Ravensmore stole her breath. The manor house stood proud and newly rebuilt, but beyond it, orange flames licked the evening sky. The chapel, ancient stone that had survived centuries, was burning. Richard was out of the carriage before it fully stopped, running toward the flames despite his leg. Catherine followed, her heart in her throat. Staff members rushed about with buckets, but the fire had taken hold too fiercely. And there, silhouetted against the flames, stood Nathaniel Roth. His face was twisted with manic satisfaction, an empty bottle dangling from one hand, a torch from the other. Blackwood, he shouted, his voice slurred but triumphant. Come to watch your precious memories burn? You took everything from me, my pride, my reputation, my future. So I take this from you, your past, your family's graves, all of it, ashes. Richard stopped, and Catherine saw him trembling with rage. Nathaniel, you are mad. This solves nothing. It only proves your complete lack of honor. Honor? Nathaniel laughed bitterly. You speak of honor, while your father destroyed my family's business. While your mother's pretty face hid the corruption beneath, they deserved what they got, Blackwood. And so do you." He raised the torch, preparing to throw it at Richard. Catherine saw the intent before it fully formed, saw the madness in Nathaniel's eyes and acted without thinking. She stepped in front of Richard, her voice cutting through the chaos. Enough. Her command was so unexpected that Nathaniel froze. "This ends now, Nathaniel. You have already destroyed yourself. Your reputation is in ruins. Your father has disowned you. You stand here, drunk and desperate, attempting murder before witnesses." She gestured to the staff, to the groundskeeper approaching with the magistrate. "If you throw that torch, if you harm anyone here, you will hang. Is that truly how you wish your story to end?" Nathaniel's face contorted. "You," he spat. "This is all because of you. If you had just married me as planned, none of this would have happened." "No," Catherine replied firmly. "If you had been a man of character, none of this would have happened. You chose cruelty. You chose pride over decency. You chose to destroy rather than build. These are your decisions, Nathaniel, your consequences." For a moment, something flickered in Nathaniel's eyes. Uncertainty, perhaps, or the faintest recognition of truth. The torch wavered in his hand. Then the chapel's bell tower, weakened by fire, began to collapse. The crash was deafening. Sparks and burning debris flew outward. Nathaniel stumbled backward, dropping the torch, which fell harmlessly into mud. The groundskeeper and 2 other men seized him immediately, wrestling him to the ground despite his struggles. The magistrate stepped forward, officially placing Nathaniel under arrest for arson and attempted murder. Richard stood frozen, watching the chapel burn. Catherine could see tears tracking down his face, reflecting the firelight. She moved to him, wrapping her arms around his waist from behind, pressing her cheek to his back. "I am so sorry," she whispered. "I know what this place meant to you." Richard turned in her embrace, pulling her close. His body shook with suppressed emotion. "Everything," he said hoarsely. "Everything from my old life is truly gone now. The house I rebuilt, yes, but the chapel, it was the last piece that remembered them. The last place where my mother's presence still lived." "No," Catherine said firmly, pulling back to look at his face. "She lives in you, Richard, in your strength, your honor, your capacity for love. Buildings burn, but people endure. Your mother's legacy is not stone and mortar. It is the man you became, the life you are building, the love you can still give." Richard's hands came up to frame her face. "How did I ever exist without you?" "Poorly, I imagine," Catherine replied, trying to lighten the moment even as tears streamed down her own face. "Despite everything," he laughed, a broken sound that was half sob. "Yes, very poorly indeed." They stood together before the burning chapel, holding each other as flames consumed the past. Around them, the staff worked to ensure the fire did not spread to the manor. The magistrate loaded Nathaniel into a cart, the broken man's threats finally silenced. "Come," Catherine said gently, "there is nothing more to do here tonight." Richard allowed her to lead him away, back toward the manor house. At the door, he paused, looking back at the flames one final time. "Goodbye, Mother," he said softly. "Goodbye, James, rest easy. I have found my way forward." As if in answer, the wind shifted and the flames began to die down. The worst of the fire had burned itself out, leaving only embers and stone. The chapel was gone, but its foundation remained. Like Richard himself, Catherine thought, scarred but standing, changed but not destroyed. That night they stayed at Ravensmore, in the rebuilt manor that Richard had not visited in years. In the master bedroom, surrounded by new furnishings and fresh paint, they held each other close. "I thought Nathaniel could destroy what mattered most," Richard said into the darkness. "But he cannot burn down what I carry in my heart. He cannot take you from me. He cannot erase the future we are building." "No," Catherine agreed, "he cannot, and now he never will." Richard's hand found hers beneath the blankets, their fingers lacing together. "Tomorrow we return to London. We begin again, truly. No more shadows from the past. Only light ahead." "Only light," Catherine echoed. Together, they fell asleep that way, hands joined, hearts aligned, while outside the embers of the old chapel cooled under a canopy of stars. Spring arrived at Blackwood House like a benediction. The conservatory bloomed with life, roses climbing the glass walls exactly as Catherine had envisioned, their perfume filling the corridors. The West Wing no longer felt like a sealed tomb but a home, filled with laughter and light and the small comforts of daily living. The fall of the Roth family had been complete and swift. Nathaniel was confined to an asylum, his mind broken by drink and obsession. Old Jeremiah Roth faced investigation for the irregularities in his business dealings, the evidence Mr. Fairchild uncovered proving Richard's father had been investigating legitimate crimes, not committing them. The shipping company collapsed, its assets sold to settle debts. London society, ever fickle, had turned the narrative of Richard and Catherine into romance rather than scandal. The Duke who rescued a wronged lady, the Duchess who defended her husband against all threats. They were invited everywhere now, though they accepted selectively, preferring quiet evenings at home to glittering balls. On Richard's birthday, a day he had dreaded since childhood, Catherine woke him with kisses and news that changed everything. "Richard," she said softly, her hand finding his beneath the covers. "I have something to tell you." He turned to her, still drowsy, his hair endearingly mussed. "What is it?" His hand covered hers where it rested on his chest, then stilled as he felt where she was guiding it. "Catherine?" She moved his palm to rest on her abdomen, still flat, but holding the promise of change. "We are going to have a child." For a long moment Richard simply stared at her, his expression unreadable. Then his eyes filled with tears, and he pulled her into his arms with a fierceness that stole her breath. "Catherine," he said, his voice breaking. "Catherine, are you certain? The physician confirmed it yesterday. I wanted to wait, to tell you today, on your birthday. A new beginning, Richard. A legacy not of loss, but of love." He kissed her then, deep and grateful and tender, his hand never leaving the place where their child grew. When he pulled back, he was smiling, truly smiling, in a way she had never seen before. "I do not deserve this happiness," he said. "I do not deserve you." "Nonsense." Catherine wiped the tears from his cheeks. "We deserve each other, and we deserve this joy. We have earned it through every trial, every fear overcome, every moment we chose love over safety." Richard's hand traced her face with infinite gentleness. "I was lost before you, Catherine, adrift in grief and duty and empty obligation. You brought me back to life. You made me believe in futures instead of only mourning pasts. And you gave me worth," Catherine replied. "Not the worth assigned by society or measured in dowries and connections, but true worth. The knowledge that I am enough, simply as I am, that I deserve love and partnership and respect." They lay together as morning light filled the room, making plans in whispers. Names for the child, preparations for the nursery, whether to spend the summer in London or at Ravensmore, which Richard was slowly learning to visit without pain. "Speaking of Ravensmore," Richard said, his tone shifting to something more serious, "I have made a decision. I am leaving the northern estates to my cousin Edmund. He is competent and kind, and the tenants already know him well." Catherine propped herself on one elbow, studying his face. "You are certain? That is a significant portion of your holdings. Material holdings, yes. But my true legacy," Richard's hand returned to rest on her abdomen, "my true legacy is here. This child. You. The life we are building together. I do not need vast estates to prove my worth. I need only to be a good husband, a good father, a good man. That is enough." "More than enough," Catherine agreed. Later that morning they shared the news with Mrs. Alder, who wept with joy and immediately began planning nursery arrangements. Hemmings, ever proper, allowed himself a rare smile and congratulated them with genuine warmth. Messages were dispatched to Catherine's father, who had been living quietly on an income Richard provided. His debts forgiven and his dignity restored. In the afternoon, Richard found Catherine in the conservatory, tending to the roses. He carried a leather-bound journal worn at the edges. "My mother's diary," he said, offering it to her. "I thought perhaps you might read it, learn about her through her own words, and someday, when our child is old enough, they can know their grandmother through these pages." Catherine took the journal reverently, "Thank you, Richard, this means everything." He pulled her close, his chin resting on top of her head as they stood surrounded by blooming flowers. "You were right, you know, that day after the fire. She does live on through me, through us. Buildings burn, but love endures. Legacy is not what we inherit, but what we create." That evening, they hosted a small dinner. Catherine's father, looking healthier than she had seen him in years. Mr. Fairchild and his wife, Mrs. Alder and Hemmings, elevated from servants to friends. It was intimate and joyful, filled with laughter and good wine and the warmth of people who genuinely cared for one another. After everyone had gone, Richard led Catherine to the library. There on his desk lay documents with red wax seals. "What are these?" she asked. "Amendments to my will," he replied. "Establishing trusts for our children, plural, I hope. Ensuring you are protected beyond any possibility of challenge. Designating funds for the conservatory's perpetual maintenance." He smiled. "Planning for a future I actually want to live to see." Catherine's eyes filled with tears. "Richard, no more crying," he teased gently, pulling her into his arms. "We have had enough of tears. Now we have only joy, only light. But these are happy tears," she protested. "Then I suppose I can allow them." He kissed her softly, his hands cradling her face. "I love you, Catherine, more than I have words to express, more than I thought myself capable of feeling. You are my redemption, my hope, my home. And you are mine," she replied, "always." They stood together in the library, surrounded by books and lamplight, and Catherine thought about the journey that had brought them here. From that terrible night at Clarendon House, when she had been cast aside, like refuse. From the cold arrangement in the coach, negotiated with legal precision. From the careful distance of early days, through the gradual thawing, the tentative trust, the explosive passion, and finally, to this: love, partnership, family. The contract they had signed months ago meant nothing now. The real bond between them had been forged through choice and courage, through standing together against threats, through choosing each other again and again, even when easier paths existed. "Come," Richard said, taking her hand. "Let us go to bed. Tomorrow begins the rest of our life, and I find myself eager for every moment of it." They climbed the stairs together, hand in hand, neither hurrying nor hesitating. In the West Wing, in the rooms that had once belonged to a duchess lost to fire, a new duchess prepared for sleep beside the man she loved. The sapphire necklace rested in its case, no longer a symbol of the past, but a bridge between generations. Richard's hand found its way to Catherine's abdomen as they settled into bed, a gesture that had already become habit. "Hello, little one," he whispered. "I cannot wait to meet you, to show you the world your mother and I have built, to teach you that love is not weakness but the greatest strength of all." Catherine covered his hand with hers. "They will be so loved, this child, so cherished. Everything we did not have, we will give to them." "Everything," Richard agreed. Outside, spring rain began to fall, gentle and nourishing. Inside Blackwood House, in the Duchess's chambers, two hearts beat in tandem while a third, tiny and new, pulsed its own rhythm between them. The house that had been a tomb was now a home. The marriage that began as contract had become covenant, and the future, once grey with grief and duty, now glowed golden with promise. Catherine fell asleep with a smile on her lips and Richard's arms around her, knowing that whatever came next, they would face it together. Not as Duke and Duchess playing roles, but as Richard and Catherine, two souls who had found each other in darkness and chosen every day to walk toward light. The story that began with public humiliation ended with private joy. The arrangement made in desperation became the foundation of genuine love. And the legacy they would leave their children was not measured in estates or titles, but in the simple, profound truth that love, real love, was worth every risk, every fear, every leap into the unknown. In the morning, London would wake to rain-washed streets and the gossip of a new day. But in Blackwood House, spring bloomed eternal, and two hearts beat as one, building a future neither had dared to dream, but both had earned through courage, choice, and an unshakable commitment to each other. Their story was complete. Their life together had only just begun. Sometimes the most beautiful love stories begin with brokenness. Catherine stood alone in a ballroom, her dreams shattered, her future uncertain. Richard lived in shadows, his heart locked away with ghosts. Neither sought love, neither believed it possible, yet in choosing each other, in standing together against judgment and threat, they discovered that true legacy is not inherited but created, that real strength lies not in walls we build, but in the courage to let them fall. Their journey reminds us that we are not defined by how others see us, but by how we choose to see ourselves, that arrangements made from necessity can transform into bonds forged by choice, that sometimes the most practical decision becomes the most profound act of faith. What broken pieces in your own life might be waiting to become something beautiful? What walls might you need to lower to let love in? If this story touched your heart, please leave a like. It helps this story reach others who need to hear it. Subscribe to the channel for more stories of love, courage, and transformation. And comment below. Tell me where in the world you are listening from. I love knowing this story is traveling to hearts across the globe. Thank you for being here, for listening and for believing, as Catherine and Richard learned to believe that even the most wounded hearts can heal and love again.